All right, welcome back. HAX Show, episode 3. Today I'm sitting down with Joe Klecker, another friend. I've only had my friends so far, so we got to get some strangers on at some point. But Joe is an Olympic finalist, a sub 13-minute 5K runner, USA champ, and he's helped build one of the best distance running teams in the world from the ground up. But more importantly, I've known Joe since high school. We've been friends since high school, and we actually live together, so that's pretty cool. But yeah, Joe, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, appreciate it.
I want to start the conversation and talk a little bit about when you started your pro career. COVID, you sort of had a weird kind of COVID college career at the end, and you were signing with a company that didn't really have distance runners at the time, was sort of like starting out and was just getting into the running scene. Can you talk about what was happening at the start of your pro career? I remember it sort of being like, what do I do? Do I sign with a brand? Do I move somewhere? Do I stay here? And can you just talk through like what that looked like?
Yeah, so obviously I was at CU and loved my coaches there. I was having a really good season, really good year. I just had gotten second at NCAA cross country. And, then COVID canceled indoor season. And so we didn't really know what was going to happen, but I was like pretty dead set on staying with my college coaches just because I had had so much success and I was really enjoying the system. And, brands were kind of in flux, not really sure what they were going to do. I had a lot of brands that were interested, and then a lot of brands that, kind of wanted to kick the can down the road and see kind of where COVID was going to go and how things were going to be affected. And kind of the brand that didn't do that was On. They were like pretty dead set on getting things going. That I don't know if it's because they were based in Switzerland or something. They were growing rapidly and they wanted to expand onto the track. And so they were very interested. And it was actually, I didn't really know much about them at the time. And I was living with, this was kind of like right after I'd moved out of your place. And I remember talking to Sam and he was saying, On is like huge in Europe. And I almost didn't really take them seriously because I'd never heard of them. And he was like, no, you should really pursue this. Like in Europe, this brand is huge. You see them everywhere. And so, took the call, took them pretty seriously and wanted to hear what they had to say. And that at the time, I didn't know they wanted to build a team. Like they kind of kept that a little bit of a secret because I don't know if they'd heard that I really wanted to stay with Mark and Heather. And so they kind of like got me really interested and I was really excited about the company and everything and what they wanted to do. And then it was probably on like my third or fourth call with them. And they said, yeah, and we also want to build a team. And I was like, well, I didn't know if they meant a team around me, like with Mark and Heather or what. And then they said, no, like we want to start a team from scratch and like with new coach. And it wasn't even necessarily going to be based in Boulder. So it was like, I got off that phone call and I was just like so lost. I mean, I was like, I really had to process it. I almost just shut it down right away because I was so set on like doing what I was doing because it was just easy. Like it was comfortable and what I knew. And, then the conversations just kept going with like, what is it going to take to get you on board? Like all this stuff. And, obviously the contracts were good and everything there was fine, but it's like, you're not running for money. You're running for chasing your dreams and chasing your goals. And so a contract was nice, but it was like, I needed to know this was going to be a system that was going to help me be successful. And the thing it came down to was being able to help choose the coach was like one of the big things that we decided on. And actually at the time it was me and another athlete who didn't end up signing with On that were kind of doing all these phone calls with the potential coaches. And when it came down to it, it was pretty clear that Ritz was like so dead set on doing this. Before he had even signed with the team or signed with On, he was helping me like with my transition to being a pro. He ran at Colorado and Mark and Heather had kind of like cut off coaching me once I told them I wasn't coming back to CU and I was probably going to like explore these team options. They kind of just said, all right, like time to move on. So I was kind of lost. And so Ritz was already helping me kind of navigate that. And he wasn't even my coach yet. And we didn't even know if he was going to be my coach. And so that was like a really nice thing of him to do and help me for these few months with training and all this stuff. And then it ended up, he did sign on, and the goal was to have him out in Boulder by the end of the year. This was in March. And so like, you think moving your family across the country is a pretty big move. And so they said, let's try and get him out here by the end of the year, hopefully in the fall. And within like a week, he was out here looking at buying houses. Within 2 weeks, he found the house he wanted, had his house on the market, and he was out here, I believe, in June. And so it just showed his dedication to this team. And so that was kind of like the nuts and bolts of like how OAC started. And then obviously once I signed, I was doing a lot of recruiting to get some of the other early members on board who signed on quickly after. But it seemed like at the time On was like, we need to get one guy to really buy into this, and then the dominoes will start to fall. And that's essentially what happened with getting, Carlos and Ollie and Jordy, and then on the women's side, Alicia, and then Dathan brought over some of his athletes that he was coaching in Michigan at the time. So we had like a pretty good squad to start from, day one.
Yeah, it was really cool. I mean, I obviously lived here, lived with you, and so I got to see all of that sort of process unfold. But some people would probably love the position you were in, where you got to basically choose your coach, sort of choose, do I want to stay here? Do I want to move? Do we want to, change things up? Did you feel pressure making those decisions, or was it like, I like being in the driver's seat here?
So there was pressure, but I would say the pressure really was that the uncertainty with, if I didn't do this, what were the other options? Like a lot of brands, or not a lot, I would say there were a few brands that were like right at the final stages of giving me a contract. And then it was, my agent was kind of like, look, we're going to have these contracts might not be for like 6 months. They kind of want to feel out this situation. Where On was like, we want to do this now. And so, yeah, the pressure was more like, if this doesn't work out, what else am I going to do? And On really just made it like apparent that they wanted to let me kind of navigate what this team was going to look like. And I really think the decisions we made back in 2020 are 100% the reason we're at where we're at now. You think of like a small decision back then, it plants the seed and then it grows into what you are today. And so I think that letting like me and Ritz really, and like the other early members really kind of like navigate that ship early on. And then we had people like Weeding, in sports marketing, who was like living the same life that I am now, like with Oregon Track Club. So we had these people who just understood like what it took to build a team, how teams failed, and so we could avoid a lot of these like downfalls. So it just, like it was a lot of pressure because you're making these decisions, and I'm like, Mark and Heather, I believed in their training 100%, and all of a sudden I have to interview these coaches and think, can I trust them to get me to this next level? And that was kind of a lot of the pressure.
Yeah. One of, seeing you at CU and now, knowing you as a pro, one of your greatest strengths is your belief in the system you're in and in your coaches. I remember, when, Mark and Heather were coaching you, like you were a disciple, and now with Dathan, same thing. Like you really believe in what he's doing. And obviously like there's been so much fruit from that. But what made Dathan stand out as the one for the job? Because you sort of had some great options. And why Dathan?
Yeah, I think one, it was his energy. Like about just early on, you could sense that he had such a vision for like, it's kind of like you're giving him a canvas to start this team. And he had been on, Oregon Project, he'd been on Hanson's, he'd been on CU. So he's been around these teams. And it's like, he knew exactly how he wanted to form a team. Like he knew why Oregon Project, what things failed there, what things at Hanson's would he tweak, And so when he got here, it was just like, he had such a vision. And so the vision went beyond just the training, like I think the training is obviously important, but really, as you probably know too, it's the network around you as an athlete, like your treatment, your lifting, your day to day, like that's what's really important. So he just had a vision for all of that. The other coaches they interviewed were great, and like On didn't hold back on who they reached out to. And I probably can't say like who they were interviewing, but it was for me, it was just an honor to talk to some of these people, coming out of college. I was like, geez, like having a phone call like asking these questions to these very established runners and coaches was amazing. But yeah, Ritz just had, I would say, a bigger, more comprehensive vision. And that was really like reassuring to me as an athlete that like, okay, like it seems like On is kind of giving him a lot of independence to do what he thinks he needs to do to be successful. And like, I can buy into this. Like it, it felt very like it was going to take off.
So you believed in Dathan. How did On convince you to believe in them as a company? Because I don't remember. Did they even have a spike?
They didn't have a spike.
Yeah.
They had some early prototypes.
Okay.
They had some early, like their training shoes at the time they had sent me, and they were just at the point where it was like, I can run in these. It wasn't like comparable to other stuff on the market, but it was like things you could tell that they were like moving in a good direction with real running shoes, not just more like casual shoes. But kind of the vision they had was like, look, we're not just building out this team of athletes and coaches here in Boulder. We're building out a full product development team here in Switzerland, and we're going to like put in all of our resources into being competitive with these, top brands from a performance standpoint. And so that was exciting, like just to hear their vision with that. And it took a lot of buying into, like that was in the whole super spike genesis, really, super shoe. And so Mark and Heather, rightfully so, wanted me to ask a lot of these questions about the product. Like they're experiencing it firsthand with athletes they coach, that it's like this product is truly changing the game. And if your brand is behind, it could be a real issue in your career. And so that was a big leap of faith because the product at the time was not competitive. And at the time, though, they did say, like, if you don't believe in the product, like you can wear competitors until we have something that you believe in. And that was another thing that really made me believe in it. And it was kind of, at the time though, it was like On had done so much for me that I wanted to wear their product. Like as soon as they had something ready, I wanted to have that on my feet. And so one of the first races I actually ran in the On spikes was when I won USA's in the 10K. They weren't on the market. It was like a prototype spike, but I know that was a huge moment for me, but a huge moment for like the product development team to be like, wow, like he just took down the American record holder in the 10K wearing our spike. He wasn't wearing a whited out competitor brand. Like that was a huge moment. So
yeah, I remember all this, happening in real time. And it was really sort of just cool to see. Did you have any doubt that this wouldn't work? Like when you're, I feel like a lot of people, like you're picking the coach, you're signing with a new brand, and you were at the peak of your running career. I mean, you were in the best collegians. You were going to be one of the best pros almost right away. Were you ever like, this might not work?
Yeah, I mean, it was at the time, during COVID and everything. It just was like, what did we need to be successful? It was like, it felt like we had the people around us, a coach, and I was like, at the bare minimum, like, you just go out and train and run. And like, yeah, if this whole thing falls apart, we'll deal with it. But like, it just kind of seemed like I didn't have many doubts because it seemed like every month it was like these new things On was doing, these new investments, these new, like, just kind of the stuff they had promised was just like coming through very quickly. It was like, oh, look, we just brought over this person and this person from these competitor brands to help develop the spikes and to help develop the footwear. And then all of a sudden we're getting prototypes in the mail, and it's just like happening so fast that it was like, there wasn't much doubt because you felt like things were happening so quickly, and that was exciting. So I think before there was time for much doubts, things just were happening.
Yeah, I think one of the best things that brands can do, which is, it sounds like it was a lot with your experience at On, is give people the resources to be successful and then get out of the way. Because all of us want to train hard. All of us want to, be the best versions of ourselves. And that's easy for us. Like you wake up every day and you're like, I know I'm going to do my 10-mile run. I know I'm going to do my double later, but do I have the things to make that as easy and accessible as possible? And to stay healthy. So it was really cool to see. And now it's like On's everywhere, and some of the best athletes in the world are wearing it. So it's really cool to see, just in 5 years, how successful things have gone. I want to talk about your track career because You have a new race you're going to be running soon, which we're going to spend the majority of the conversation talking about. But you had such a good track career, and I'm still running on the track and chasing times that, you know, you've run. Like I said, you're a sub 13-minute 5K runner. You've run low 27s for the 10K, USA champ. Out of all those races, what is the one you're most proud of in your entire track career?
Yeah, it's a hard question because I think at the time when you run these races, it's like your most proud moment. Like certainly going and breaking 13 was a big one at Boston because it, you know, it's a little more common now to break 13, but at the time it was still not common. And it was such a goal of mine to go break 13 that like all fall, that was the only thing on my mind. And I got in the race and I had my teammates pacing me, which was amazing. And I remember they stepped off and I just had so much adrenaline. I just started hammering 30-second 200s. And I was like, I'm going to do this. Like I'm in the driver's seat. It was so loud at BU. And I got to 4,800 meters and I almost like couldn't even finish the race. I think that was my slowest lap. Woody caught me, you know, kind of a classic for me on the track, I guess. But he ended up winning, but I ran 12:54 and probably closed in like a 36 or something. Like it was, but it made me more proud of it. I was like, I got everything out of me. Like I was on the track for 10 minutes after the race. They probably had to delay all the heats of the 5K because I couldn't get up. Like I had totally spent myself. And I remember people commenting on like the YouTube video being like, wow, he might never be the same runner again. I've never seen someone put themselves in the ground that much. You know, I remember Ritz picked me up to get off the track and I just fell back down. Like I was borderline telling him to call an ambulance. Like I was that out of it. So that was like one of my most proud moments, like just getting the most out of myself. And then when I look back as like a race that I'm the most proud of was just being in the Florence 5K. No one probably remembers it at this point, but at the time it was the race with the most people in one race under 13. So I think it was 12 or 13 people broke 13 minutes and I was right in the thick of it, maybe 6th place, but it was a blanket finish. And I remember like down the home stretch, I caught some really big names and it was just like, wow, like I'm right in there with some of the best in the world with 100 meters to go, just kicking down the home stretch. So that was like a race where I was just like, felt like I was in it. You know, I'm here with the best in the world.
Yeah. When you lived with me, I felt like the training you did at CU is very different than what you do now. I'm sure there's a lot of people that are curious about Mark and Heather's training, you know, running with the Buffaloes is, you know, it's sort of very historic program. Can you talk about the track training you did in college, what that looked like, and now, you know, when you were with Ritz and doing track training, what that looked like?
For sure. So at CU, it was a very strength-based program, a lot of mileage, very like based on kind of Arthur Lydiard principles. We were doing hill bounding, you know, kind of the whole 9 yards that you read about in Arthur Lydiard's books. Before I went to CU, I actually read Running the Lydiard Way to prep me for what training at CU was going to be like. So it's very similar to that. Long run is a huge focus of the week, as most people know. Medium long run on Wednesday, like you're just running a lot of miles. So at the time it was like getting up to around 100 to maybe 105 miles a week, which for an 18 to 22-year-old felt like a lot. And so that was the focus of the training. And then, you know, all of a sudden it'd be like, oh, we got a race coming up. We should probably do some harder workouts. And so for track, at least, like I remember my big workout, which sounds like comical now, is I had the Millrose Games coming up and we did 4 times 1K with 4 minutes rest at 2:45. I was meant to hit 2:40 and I can only hit 2:45. And it was meant to be kind of a pace sim workout. And Mark, I remember afterwards just goes, well, I think you can break 8 minutes. And I was just like devastated. You know, here I am like hoping to run, you know, 740 or go for the school record, which I think is, you know, low 740s or something. And I couldn't even run 245Ks. So a lot of mileage, but the track workouts were so small, like 3, 2, 1, a lot of speed work, like short reps, you know, working on your turnover, but not a ton of big like VO2. Like you weren't just doing 10 times 800 at 210 or something like that. It was just a lot of fartleks. we did threshold runs. It was called our LT days. At the time, lactate threshold wasn't a buzzword. So we would do 5 mile LT runs, which was just 5 miles at 5-minute pace pretty much on the track. And
nothing in the afternoon.
No, nothing in the afternoon. Maybe a double. But even then, Mark and Heather didn't tell you what to do for mileage. It was like so self-driven. They never asked what you did for mileage. Like I could go run 120 miles. I could go run 80 miles for the week. They would never ask. You just knew what you're supposed to do. But I think the real power in Mark and Heather's training program that you were kind of alluding to earlier was like my belief in it. I was talking to our trainer Koki about this week because they coached him a little bit for the marathon, and you rolled up to a meet and you just felt like you had the best coach in the world, and what everyone else was doing was just inferior to what you were doing. And like Mark and Heather and Billy kind of have this like mystery aura about them, and so you just felt like, I don't care what happened, like what anyone else is doing, like we're doing the best training. And so you rolled up with a ton of confidence, and that just really, I think, is what powered me in college. But yeah, I mean, in another world, like running for them for the marathon would be amazing. Like I think they're such good coaches, and they don't care what anyone else is doing. They do their own thing.
Yeah, it is so cool to, when you were on CU and stuff, we'd see the buffs out on long runs and just Mark and Heather in the vans and, handing out Gatorade and stuff. And there was like this mystical element about them. Like you had no idea, like they were not on social media. They're not, barking in interviews. They just are developing American distance runners in college. And it was cool. Like I remember when I was getting recruited by Mark, like that was a cool phone call to get. Like I was a big fan, and it was just cool to be able to talk to him.
Yeah, no, Mark has some just, people think he's this real cold person, but once you're on the team with him, he was hilarious. I mean, I remember one time, a couple funny short stories. Like we were at a meet, and I forget what team it was, but another Pac-12 school, all their athletes were out like that morning. We're all eating breakfast, and his athletes are out doing like a 10-minute run. And their coach watching their athletes do their run was like, Mark, why don't your athletes do warm-up runs or shakeout runs in the morning? And he goes, why do your athletes do shakeout runs in the morning? He goes, oh, it just warms up the engine. And he goes, well, my athletes don't have engines. And it's like, I do shakeout runs now, but at the time I was just like, yeah, we don't have engines.
I love that. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, no, it is really cool to see. Dathan was coached by Mark, correct?
Yeah, Dathan was coached by Mark. Laura was coached by Mark and Heather. So honestly, OAC has a lot of roots in CU.
Yeah, that's really cool. Do you ever see elements of Mark's training in some of Dathan's workouts?
Yeah, certainly in the emphasis on the long run. That's like a staple, like especially in marathon training. And then, for me, leaving Mark and Heather's program, it was so hard to show up to a long run and be like, oh yeah, we're just running easy today. And I'm like, no, you don't run easy on the long run. That's a workout. And so that's something that's transferred over, and just the emphasis on volume. Ritz is definitely a mix of a lot of different systems, but there's certainly a lot of aspects of Mark and Heather that's in that system.
Yeah, you've already alluded to this, but when I think of, and I haven't been coached by either of them, but when I think of Mark and Heather, I think of the long run as a staple of the week. And when I think of Ritz, I think of like his track interval sessions. Mm-hmm. But there's obviously like, you do both of those things now. And so seeing sort of just the elements of influence, and that's what's cool about coaching is, there's you take what works and you take, you adjust things, and that's what makes a great coach.
Yeah, and I think a big part of it too is being older. Like coaching an 18 to 22-year-old, it's so much more emphasis on the foundation. Like when I was doing 20-mile long runs at CU at 6-minute pace, that's probably a threshold type workout, where now that's much more of just a basic, long run. So as you get older and develop, you need to adjust the training with it. And so that's where I saw Ritz as like a next step in the training. Like you said, the track workouts are another level. Like the intensity is another level. But as you get older, you can handle more, and things need to adapt. So,
what about right before a race? What is Mark saying to you, and what is Dathan saying to you? Like in terms of just like personalities, what are you getting? I just had one experience with like Dathan after this year. I got fourth, in a really close race, and he just came up to me and he just gave me a big bear hug and was just like, hey, like, I'm really proud of you. That was a great race. Like, you should be proud of that. He said something along those lines. I don't get the vibe that that's Mark, but help me out here.
Yeah, I think that Mark, it was just like, if we all do what we're trained to do, we're going to do well, you know? And that was kind of the, always like going into a race, it kind of like made you feel at ease a little bit. Like, I just need to do what I'm trained to do. And you knew you had a good race if Mark came up and gave you a handshake afterwards. And so I remember like my first race at CU, I was unattached running the shootout, and I got beat by my roommate Dressel. We're kind of both competing for that top 5 spot on the team that was picked to win nationals that year. They ended up second. But, you know, Mark shook my hand afterwards. I didn't think anything of it. And I remember, I don't know if it was Connor or one of the older guys on the team was like, no, if Mark does that, like, it means he was impressed with how you did. And so I was like, oh, okay. Like, maybe I'll make the team, even though I didn't beat John. I didn't make the team that year, but I think it was like, yeah, that's how he shows you like it was a good race. And then usually like the early season races, if they don't go that well, is just a classic to be like, yep, we've only done long runs. We haven't done any speed work yet. We'll get there by the end of the year. And we always did. Like in cross country, normally what I would finish at pre-nats, which pre-nats doesn't have everyone there, I would generally finish higher at nationals than pre-nats. You know, I'd be like around 10th at pre-nats, and then, you know, I'd go finish like second at that year. I got second at cross country. And so it was like, things did progress. Like, you trusted that system and it did work out the way Mark would say. But in the moment, you're just like, oh gosh, I was 10th. Like, I'm trying to win nationals this year. Why am I 10th at pre-nats?
Yeah. You had such a successful track career, which we alluded to. I want to know why you're now running a marathon. Like, there is a justification for you keep running track. You know, like, you're still very, very young. You're still one of the best runners in the U.S. on the 5K and 10K. Why are you running the marathon? And can you talk us through the decision behind that? And sort of, you know, I feel like observing you've been training for a marathon your whole career. Like, I'm like, Joey's going to run a great marathon.
Yeah.
But why now?
So when I joined on, I think it was always apparent that I was going to do the marathon. A little bit with my pedigree. My parents were great marathon runners. My mom was a 92 Olympian for the USA. It was like, okay, this guy's born to be a marathoner. And I think because of a lot of the success I was having on the track, it just pushed back that debut in the marathon. It was like, how are you going to take me running sub 13, winning USAs, you know, competing in diamond leagues, to all of a sudden being like, oh, we're going to go run the marathon now. You couldn't do it. Like, there was never a logical time to do it. And then the year of Paris, I had a big injury, didn't run much. It was an OP injury, like a strained adductor. It was brutal. Like, nothing was enjoyable. Like, I couldn't even like sit up in bed, and it was so much pain. And so for 6 months, I was kind of sidelined from any real training. Like, I would jog occasionally, but it wasn't much training. And so when we came back from that and we were healthy again, it was like, look, this might be the time that we transition to the marathon. Like, we know we're going to do this. The original plan was to do it in the off year 26, so this upcoming year. But it was like, do we go back to the track for a year and then make this move? Or do we kind of jump the gun after this big injury, knowing that this injury is very sensitive to speed and intensity? And so it's like, we can do a lot of volume and kind of build slowly the engine. And then over time, when you're 100% healthy, we can add that intensity back in. But so that just made a lot of sense to start that transition last year. And it was always something we knew we were going to do. But yeah, doing it last year was a bit earlier than I thought. But in the moment, it just felt like totally the right decision. I was like, yep, like, let's go do it. Like, let's go run Houston. Let's go do every road race we can this spring and gain experience and kind of get my tail kicked most of the time. But had a few good ones in there, and more than anything, I learned a lot this spring. So it was a good time.
Joe's kicked my ass at both of the 2 road races I did with him. So yeah, he beat me at Cherry Blossom and Boulder this year.
But you had me in your sights in Cherry Blossom.
I did.
And I was jogging.
Yeah. No, it was cool to see you sort of just throw yourself to the wolves and just try basically every road race possible. I just had Connor on and I asked him a similar question, but I'm just curious. Are you more worried and scared about the physical aspect of the marathon, or just for racing for 2 hours, like mentally, like you've never done that before?
Yeah, that's good question. To be honest, like I think that we've done so much in training that has mirrored the marathon that I feel very like I'm not that I know it's hard. I know the marathon's gonna be tough. I'm not undermining it, but I feel like very prepared. And so like we do these 25-mile long runs, and the first one of the build is just kind of get the volume in. And over the course of the build, they become closer and closer to marathon effort. And the last one we did, I just really feel like things were coming together from a fueling standpoint, from fatigue resistance to pressing for 2 hours. Like it just felt like all the training we'd done like came into this one run, and I was like, wow, like this is like the training's working, And so I don't know. I'm sure once I get to New York, there's going to be things that I'm like worried about and everything. But as of right now, like I'm just very excited to execute how I did that 25-mile long run and be like, look, if I can just go do that, like execute the fueling, execute, the level of how much I'm willing to push the first 16 miles. What are we going to do from 16 to 21? Like there's a different level of assertiveness that you have to make sure you can finish strong. With New York or any marathon, pace, I kind of throw out the window, especially New York. I'm not even going to wear a watch. It's more judging like efforts. And so I'm like, if I can just go do that again, I feel like it's going to be a really fun day. So right now there's not much worry. I'm just so excited to like execute what we've been practicing for 3-4 months.
What was the Ritz marathon flair for your training? Because obviously I only know him as basically a track coach. He's coached, 800 runners all the way up to 10K runners successfully. And you sort of just had like Helen as your training partner for the majority of your, first build. So what differences did you see? I know you're running a little bit more.
Yeah.
But what else was your first training block look like?
Yeah. So the volume has been more 120 to 125 versus on the track around 105 to 110. And honestly, that hasn't been a big adjustment. It's felt pretty natural. The big thing is long runs. They're always intense. They're always a purpose behind them. I think it's the best session you can do to mimic the race. So it's the most race specific session we do. But honestly, it's a lot of the same elements. We're still getting on the track. Like this week, I'll do 200s on the track. I'm still working out with the track guys when it makes sense in like a VO2 session. The threshold workouts now are a little more, instead of threshold, it's more marathon pace. So it'd be like, we kind of eye like 3-minute Ks up here on a moderate loop as like, depending on the day, depending how you're feeling, that's like what we say marathon pace. So a lot of volume at 3-minute Ks, broken up into different kind of reps, 5Ks, 3Ks, whatever. But not a ton has changed, just a little more emphasis on the strength. The VO2 is a little less, but Helen has been like just a great person because for a lot of this build, Ritz was gone in Tokyo. And so it was kind of like me, our new teammate Ryan, Laura, just kind of going through this build. And so it was really nice to have Helen to kind of like bounce off, like, how are you feeling today? Are you tired from that workout? And, understand like how are you supposed to feel going into some of these sessions. I think the long run has probably been like the biggest like thing that is a focus always.
Do you feel like you could come back to the track? Like, do you think you could, I'm just curious because, I think some people are like, once you do the marathon, you lose all your speed. You can only run a ton of miles a week, and that's who you are until the end of your career. Do you feel like there is a world where you could come back to the track?
Yeah, I really do. Like right now, I don't know what I could go run a 5K in, but I feel like I could run pretty fast. Like mechanically, I feel good. I'm healthy. Like I think that maybe I haven't lost that speed. I feel like I'm still going on the track and running 200 similar to what I did when I was running 5K on the track. And so it's not like I've lost that. And certainly like the shift in training has geared more towards strength versus like that VO2 work, but if I did want to like switch it up or say I'm getting ready for a half marathon, I think that training lines up really well with the track. The only difference now is like the focus. Any track race I do is going to be a support work for the roads. And, you know, when you've run sub 13 and like, you know, I was like, maybe I'll go to BU this year and run a 5K. But it's like, if I go run 13:10, I'm like that's still good relative to everyone I'm racing on the roads in a lot of races, but it's hard. I'm like, do I really want to go do that? Like,
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. Like what is that doing for you at this point?
yeah, especially like mentally too.
Yeah. Reed was our first guest on the show, and I sort of wanted to poke and prod him about just like the, you know, economics of marathon running, and sort of like, you know, road races, you make a lot more money than track races in some aspects.
Yeah.
You were a guy like you is a hot commodity for a debut. I want to know why you chose New York. To me, New York has always been the racers marathon. Like it's like there's no pacers. No one's really going for a fast time because it's not that fast of a course. But I feel like you're from the Midwest, you know, like was Chicago ever an option? Like what were you looking at, and like did financials play into that?
Yeah. I think first, like I'm very fortunate with On that like I didn't really have to factor in the financials of it. Like obviously when you look at these races, it is a factor, but when I'm doing this journey, On supporting me to be like the best marathoner I can be. And I'm looking at like, where can I have a successful debut? Like what, you know, if I go to my first marathon, this race is paying me X amount of money and this race is paying me X amount of money. I was kind of like, where can I go be successful? Like, I don't even know the details of my contract for New York. Like Ray, it's like, hey, your deal for New York came through. I glanced at it and said, good. Like I'm so focused on racing, and I'll look at it afterwards. And I'm sure Ray knows the ins and outs of it, but, it just wasn't like too much of a factor. And I know for some people it is, but fortunately, like I'm in a position where On is just like, look, we want you to develop into the best marathoner you can be, and go where you think you're going to be successful. And for me, like that was New York. Chicago, yeah, as a Midwesterner, like we thought about it, like it's close to home. It's a flat, fast course. As a track runner, that could play into your strengths. But as we saw in Houston this year, when I went there, which is a flat, fast half marathon, it just exposed a lot of weakness I had moving up to the roads. And so I looked at Chicago. I'm like, this could be a similar scenario to Houston, where I get in there and on like, you know, 2 miles into the race, I'm already like, whoa, this is like in over my head. And you got to pick a pace group in Chicago. You know, you decide where you're going to race pretty early. So that's kind of why I steered away from Chicago for this one. And I'm sure I'll do Chicago at some point in my career. But for my first one, like I'm not going to wear a watch. I don't even want to think about time. And like in these workouts, I'm never thinking about time, really. Like I looked at Helen. I'm like, dude, she is never once looking at a rep split. She's never looking at her pace for a long run. She's never looking at her pace for an easy day, which her easy days are insane. But I'm like, why would I be sitting here like looking at my pace for every rep and everything I'm doing when, you know, a New York champion, Boston champion is sitting here just training, just running hard. And like she could run a 3K. Like we had 3Ks yesterday, and it's like she could be running 9 minutes or 10 minutes. If she's getting in the effort she needs, she's fine with it. Like it's not a factor of, oh no, I was 5 seconds slow.
Yeah. New York City does seem like the place to debut though. Just in terms of like, I've raced a 5K there, you know, like I've watched the marathon. It looks like it's an incredibly exciting atmosphere, but it does feel like guys who are excited about racing do well there. Like I just remember watching Reed like move up so well, you know, he was like the second American or, you know, third American that year and was top 10 overall. And it was just like, yeah, he ran like 2:14 or something, but no one cared. Like he had a great race. So it does feel like that is the place to debut, as you know, a good first time. Do you have an idea of what you would be proud of when you're finished?
Yeah. Like in this race.
Yes.
Yeah, that's like, I think it's a really, like you said, a really good race where it's just a pure race. And like for me, I've raced a lot of the Americans in the field, and to simplify my race plan, Laura and Dathan are like, look, let's look at the people we've raced a lot this spring and try and like race, the race within the race. Let's key off them and like that's where you're going to be able to like kind of gauge your efforts a little bit. Cause I just raced Bia and we had a nice back and forth for 10 miles and he got me at the end, but it was a very like pretty even race, I'd say. And it was fun. And so in New York, it's like, okay, let's go do it again. And so that makes it a little easier, but, like an AA day is top American and top 8, I think between 5th and 8th would be amazing. A B day, top 3 American, top 10. And I think the lowest I would be like, okay, this is a solid debut would be top 12, and like top 5 American. Again, I don't like even really know everyone in the field or, it just, that's kind of like, talking to like my teammate Ryan, who was 11th last year, just kind of gauging off what he had to say about his race and where he feels I'm at. That sounds like a realistic goal. But I think it's good to have that kind of ABC because, like in Houston, I was so set on like going out on 60-minute pace and trying to kick it down. And when that wasn't in the cards, I was just like, I don't even know what I'm out here for anymore. Like I got caught by Reed in the 61-minute group and I was like, 61 minutes never excited me because I never thought about it. And so I think that was a terrible approach. And so I want to have like this kind of ABC goals where it's like, oh, if I feel amazing, let's do this. Okay, we're having a solid day. We're doing this. Okay, like this is the minimum. I can call this a great debut. Let's still fight for that.
Yeah, I feel like you are entering the road scene in the most insane time in like U.S. history. I mean, you obviously have Connor and Bia and Hillary and just so many amazing athletes. And I remember like after we warmed up before, Cherry Blossom, I was like sitting there and I was like, oh yeah, like we're not going to go out hard though. It's a 10 miler. And you were just like, Drew,
we're going to go through the mile in 4:10.
Yeah, no, literally. And I was like, come on, Joe, you're kidding. And then like, I'm literally sprinting the first half mile and I'm like off the back of like the elite pack. And that's just what racing is now on the roads.
Yeah. I mean, it was a interesting time to start this year with my first race being Mance, just smashing the American record. And then every race since then, Cherry Blossom American record, US 25K champs American record, even going to like, Boulder, they're running fast, all these races. And so I talked to some people like Hillary and Reed and who've been on the road racing scene a little bit more. And they're like, yeah, like things have changed. Like we go out in 4:10 now for the mile, and that's just a reality. And you have to train to be able to do it, where before you might have like 1 or 2 guys break away and try and like put a surge in early. But now it's like in Cherry Blossom, we went through 5K in 13:58. And how many guys were there? Like 15. And I just remember thinking like, I'm redlining and there's 15 guys here right now. Like this is insane. And so early on in the road racing career, that was like such a hard thing to fathom because I'm like, why are people not falling back? And so now I'm like, okay, that's how it goes. And like, that's a good thing to learn. But yeah, like it's just a crazy time in road racing and it's really fun because, like at Twin Cities this weekend, it's just like, all right, I'm just going to go sprint as hard as I can, get to the front. And then if anyone tries to go in front of me, I'll just sprint a little harder. And that's what I did as long as I could. And it's quite a fun way to race.
Yeah, I remember talking to Bia and he was like, and I sort of was saying the same thing to him. I was just like, oh yeah, like, I'll hang back a little bit. And he was just like, Drew, get to the front, run as hard as you can. Here is the red line. Go right here for as long as you possibly can. That is the only tactic you need for road racing. That's it.
I think the whole like start back and work your way up is, for New York, I think it can be a really good tactic in some of these more technical races. But in Houston, how are you catching someone running 4:25, 4:30 a mile? Like you got to be up in it early. And especially if you're in no man's land, it's so hard to like run that pace. And so you kind of got to just go out there and be in it, that's what I learned this spring. And, I've gotten better at it, I think.
I feel like you've done a great job embracing even though you haven't raced a marathon yet, I look at you now as a marathoner. Do you see yourself as that? Or are you still just like, we're going to see how New York goes, then make a call from there?
Well, I mean, there's nowhere to go. Like I'm not going back to the full-time track. So it's like, I'm very committed to doing the marathon. So it's like good or bad in New York, we move on and we get ready for what's next and kind of keep progressing. I mean, that's how this whole year has been, is like, okay, like we get kicked down. What do we learn? Where are we going from here? And so that's how I view New York. But yeah, no, I think like the marathon is where I'm going to be. And like, yeah, there's no going back to the track from here. There's no, like, the hard thing in the US is, what do you go back to? Like 10 guys breaking 13 minutes. It's not like you're going back to somewhere that it's like, you're just going to be more successful. Like, I think marathon is where I can be the most successful right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely think like, as I've seen in your entire career, like whatever you sort of put your, your mindset to and put your head at, like you're gonna figure it out. Like I remember you being disappointed after Houston, and I was like, man, I would love to run that half marathon. And Joe's like, we gotta back to the grindstone. Let's figure out what we can do. But that's why you're going to be successful at this. This is mainly, people love this stuff. So I'm just going to ask you, do you have a workout that gave you confidence? You already mentioned that long run, but do you have any intervals or anything that you felt like were like, okay, I can, successfully run 26.2 miles?
Yeah. A little different from the track. I've told people this, like on the track, I got to the point where when I was racing 5K, it's like, if I could do X workout, I knew I could run 1250. Like I just had it down to a science where I knew where I was at. And I think when I started on the roads, I was so trying to find this like X's and O's, like if I can do this, then I can go run this. And I think that was where I ran into a lot of issue early on the roads, was like, it just doesn't work like that. Like, there's weather, there's the courses, the pacing, whatever. Like, just because you do something in training, it's not translating directly to your time or your place. Like, I kind of had down to a science on the track. Same with like the 10K. It was like, okay, 25 times 400 off 30 seconds. If I can run 65s, I know I'm in 27 low shape. For me, that's what it was. But I think for the roads, the biggest thing that's given me confidence is the cumulative, like, running a high volume, 120 to 125. Every workout I've done 18 miles the day before. So every workout I'm going into with supposedly flat legs, even though I feel amazing on a lot of these workouts, but 18 miles the day is before every workout. And then just doing like on flat, tired legs, on fresh legs, whatever they are, I'm just going out and running like 3-minute K pace. And I know, like I said, I don't care about the pace that much, but comparing that to like the track, like, I'm like, okay, I can go do 10, 12, 15 miles of work at 3-minute K pace. I'm like, this is showing that, my metabolism, everything is like gearing towards being able to race for 2 hours at this level of intensity. And then, yeah, the long run was just kind of a culmination of a lot of those things. Like, I felt the mental ability to push for 2 hours. I felt like I could push up the hills. I felt like I could open it up on the downhills. My legs were not so fatigued. Like, I know that was a problem for me in college and early in my pro career. Like, on these long runs, my legs would get so fatigued, I just couldn't open up my stride. And so now it's like, I'm feeling like I can do that. So it's like all these factors have come together in the long run, but it's really just the kind of culmination.
I want to ask one more question about the marathoning, because it's something I'm curious about. And you mentioned it the other day when we ran. You said you talked about all the carbs you were consuming while an hour. I can't even remember what. You can tell us in a second. Was that a hard transition? Because, I mean, in the track, it's like you're racing for 13 minutes. Mm-hmm. You're sipping on carbs maybe right before you get on the starting line, but there's no fueling during the race. It's pretty simple. And like you fuel during training and things like that. But was that something you looked forward to? Was that something that like you had help with? And how has that transition to like just having a fueling strategy gone?
Yeah, it's something that like our teams worked pretty closely with some sports scientists, and they believe that even still a lot of marathoners are not fueling enough. Like, there was one sports scientist I was working with, and he was showing me this graph of like, they did some studies on people, and it was like, okay, if you consume 70 grams of carbs an hour, you're switching over to primarily fat metabolism around 21 miles. And this is on average. So this is like, everyone's different, but on average. And then it's like, now when we bump this up to 90 grams of carbs an hour, you're switching over to fat metabolism around 22 or 23 miles. And then the group consuming around 100, it was like 23, 24. And so it's like, okay, clearly the more carbs you're consuming, the later you're starting to rely on your fat metabolism, which is much more expensive in terms of oxygen cost and running economy to maintain your pace. So using carbs is essential. And so this person, I'm a bigger runner, I'm 70 kilos. And so a lot of the carbing guidelines in races is based on grams per kilo. And so I'm like, okay, I need to be on the upper end of that because I'm 70 kilos. And then I need let's see, like the more carbs I consume, the later I'm pushing that fat metabolism. Maybe I'm relying on carbs for my whole 26.2. That's my goal. When you see people bonk, a lot of times it's because they switch from carbohydrate metabolism to fat metabolism. And it's just so much more efficient. You think they're just bonking. It's like, no, their body is just using a different fuel source. So fueling has been like something I've been very intentional about, and something that these sports scientists have drilled into me that is like critical, and they still think people are not taking it seriously enough. You see bikers doing 200 grams an hour. Running, it's much harder to stomach that much carbs. But like in training, it's something I've focused on a lot. I know like David Roche, like I've looked at some of his stuff. He's a crazy into the fueling as well. And he goes crazy with it, with how much carbs he consumes. But I think that like the more, the better, like in a lot of cases, if you can stomach it. And so I was excited to like start experimenting and like taking carbs and how much can I handle and how do I feel taking this many carbs, etc. Knowing that, like, knock on wood, my stomach has never been an issue. Like I've told people at CU, we had lunch at noon, practice at 2. Lunch could have been a burger and fries. It could have been steaks. I mean, the lunch was made for the football team to gain weight. So I'm sitting here at noon or 12:30 eating a steak, and then I'm going and running 15 miles at 2. And so it's like my stomach was very resilient. And so now when I'm doing these carbs, like the other day, I was like trying to go crazy with it. And before every 2-mile rep, I just chugged 50 grams of carbs, like in 30 seconds. And so in 50 minutes, I took in 250 grams of carbs. And I'm not doing that in the race, but you know, David Roach and some of these sports scientists are saying like it's good to overtrain it. So when you're in the race with nerves, you know, in a racing setting, you know, you're not doing that much carbs, but you can easily handle what you're going to take. And so it's been a fun experience and fun experiment, but like it's made a huge difference. Like on my last long run, I mean, I was doing a lot. I do the bottles in the same increments of New York, 5K, 10K, 15, 20, 25, 30, 36, like 7 bottles. Like I've had this every run, like trying to get this down to a science. And, like my last 5 miles, they're like, yeah, like run marathon effort. If you can get down to like 5 minutes for the mile, that'd be great. Didn't look at my watch, just ran what I thought marathon effort was. And I looked at my last 5 miles and I was running 450 a mile up here at altitude. And I was just like, wow, like if I had to go run a 420 mile at the end of that, I could have. And so like, I think these carbs are like working. I think my stomach's processing it and this whole thing is working. And so I'm excited to go try and execute that in New York. And then we've been playing around a little more with caffeine. That's been, Dathan and Laura have dialed me back on that. I was doing way too much, and some days it was amazing. And some days I was just like, my stomach would just like be in knots. But yeah, I think we have it pretty dialed in, and it's been like using every workout, every long run as like a trial and error for what's going to be my plan on race day in New York. And I have it down to such a system. So when I see people, again, I'm not a marathoner, so I can't critique people too much, but when I see people just like having a gel, be like, oh, I might have a gel here, a gel there. It's like, how could you go into a race with that plan? Like I have like so down what I'm going to do on race day, and I just want to go try and execute it. And that's why I'm excited about. And that's why like, I haven't thought too much about the results in New York. I just want to execute between the start and the finish. And I think it can go very well if I do that.
Yeah. I mean, that's so cool to hear. And that I feel like fueling has just been something that I've thought about in the last few years. And it is something that I feel like all of us should pay more attention to. You and Sage just celebrated 3-year wedding anniversary not too long ago, right?
Yeah, October 16th.
So for those who don't know, Joe's wife is also a very good athlete. she ran 155 in Tokyo World Championships this summer. What was it like watching her do that? I mean, that was third fastest American ever. It was an incredible performance. And like, I don't even know if Sage thought she could do that.
Yeah.
Did you think she could?
So, you know, I was at home here because I was training for New York. She was like, as much as she wanted me there, she was like, I get it. You're running 125 miles a week. Can't be in the middle of Tokyo doing that, getting ready for New York. So I was at home, but I was like very locked in, and Dathan had a lot of athletes there. And so I felt like she was leaning on me a little more than even like the coaches, which is, I guess, normal for like a spouse. But like going into the week, I was like, I saw her run a time trial 800, and she ran 159 or 2 flat going 64.56. And she finished it just jogging, like stand up. I was like, okay, if you can do that at altitude, altitude's not a huge factor in the 800, but if she can do that looking the way she looked, I was like, I know you can run 156. I knew like without a doubt she could run 156. And so going into Tokyo, I was like, look, we need to execute these rounds and get to the final. Like the first round was whatever. I was like, okay, it's a little easier to get out of the first round. Just get to the front. You're strong enough. Go do it. Second round, she gets her heat draw and she calls me and she's like, hey, I got the hard heat. Like my heat has the most highly ranked people, the best PRs, et cetera, et cetera. And I was like, you just need to fight tooth and nail for 4th place. Like, don't need to win it, but 4 time qualifiers are coming out of your heat. Like I told her this, and I kind of feel like a genius now because she passed Daguma, who was the silver medalist in Tokyo last year, right at the line, gets 4th place. She's the last time qualifier into the final. And I was like, look, you did it. You fought tooth and nail for 4th place. You got to the final. And then she's in the final, and you know, she's not someone who was just happy to be there. She's been so close to making US teams so many times. And that's what I told her, and you know, her personality. She was like, I'm never going to just celebrate being here. Like, it's such an honor after trying to make this team for so many years. And so she's in the final. I'm watching old races, Tokyo, you know, Budapest, all these past races, looking at the results, studying them. And I'm like, look, everyone who's podiumed or been top 5, we thought 5th was going to be the best. Like I was like, top 5 is an amazing day for you. And so I was like, if you want to be top 5, you need to be there at the bell. You need to be in the top 5. Like anyone who's outside of the top 5 at the bell finishes outside the top 5, barring some big outliers. And anyone who's in top 5 at the bell finishes top 5, barring someone dying, which happened a few times, but you got to go for it. So then she goes into the final. I see her at the bell down the home stretch, pulling up into like 4th, 5th place. And I was like, yeah, she's got this. Like she might die the last 200, but like she's doing everything she can to get towards that podium. And I knew she was in 156 shape. And when I saw 56.0 at the 400, I was like, okay, this could get tough. But I just kind of kept seeing her fighting, and I can tell when she's like has positive momentum and backwards momentum, and she just kept looking like she was moving up. And crosses the finish line. I see the winning time, 154, and I was like, she was just steps behind the winner. Like she's going to be for sure 156. And the time pops up 158 or 155.8, and I was just like, holy cow! Like that's a new league. I didn't know, you know, what American that was or anything, but I was like, this just validates like the years of hard work. Like she's gotten in such better shape over the last 3 years that just hasn't translated into a time or a race. And so everyone's like, oh, this breakthrough, where did she come from? 155. I'm like, yeah, but these breakthroughs happen when there's years of hard work behind it. And so 155 shocked me. It shocked Dathan, shocked the whole team. But 156 was like, we knew so deep down she could do it. But it was incredible to see. And she was like so deserving of it. And I think she was like at a point in her career where she was a little bit like, do I leave the 800? Have I gotten everything out of it? I haven't made a team, like feeling like a little bit like, what is this whole career I've done so far been for? I have nothing really to show for it. Other than some good PRs, some good races, good experiences. But that really solidified like, okay, like now she doesn't need to prove anything. Like she's done something that she can say, I was 5th in the world. This is like certainly she still has goals. Like she wants to get better and medal and do all this stuff. But it's like at this point now she's like, okay, I saw the work come through. Where it's like when you're doing that work for years and years and years and it's just the same result, you're like, is this really worth it?
Yeah, it's so cool. I feel like you have so few moments in your career where you're on the starting line of the race where everything, just the stars align. And that's what I felt like it was for Sage. Like she made the U.S. team for, like the team she'd wanted to for so long. Even a hard fought at USA Champs to get
Made
there.
it by 0.01 seconds.
Yeah. But was in the right race at the right time and ran just such an amazing race. And it was really cool. Just knowing both of you and just seeing like, knowing like sort of the behind the scenes stuff that you just mentioned, like seeing her work really hard to get there was awesome. Yep. Do you guys, and you mentioned a little bit, like you sort of were like, hey, this is where you need to be, like positioning. It sounds like you give a lot of her X's and O's. Do you guys talk about that stuff? Like, is she like, hey, in New York, like, I think you can do this for the marathon. How do you guys balance that competitive energy as two of the top athletes in the world? Or do you guys give each other space?
Yeah, I think for the road racing stuff, she just tries to be really like supportive of me. Like, especially now leading into New York, she realizes like my time and energy is like so limited and valuable. And these last 2 weeks, it's like, I need to be so, mindful with what I'm doing at any given time. And so she's been like just a huge, like background support. Like, okay, like I'll make dinner tonight. Okay. I'll order the groceries, etc. Stuff like that. That it's just like these little energy drains that she can like take off my plate has been really, huge, and just allowing me to rest and show up to these workouts in the best I can. In terms of like how to race and everything, I think she realizes she doesn't understand the roads as like, she doesn't try to be that. Fortunately, I have like some coaches like Laura and Dathan who have amazing marathon careers that it's like, I can lean on them for race planning and all that, where for Sage, it's a little harder. Like Dathan was a distance guy. Like he knows the 800, he knows the training, he knows the physiology. But I think when it comes down to racing it, like, he's very smart, but like she has to be a little more independent on like, okay, how do I feel today? How am I going to approach this? Where in a 5K, Ritz is so dialed on that. And so, I think that's how it plays a little differently, is like, I can lean on my coaches a lot more for race planning. She can to a degree, but her coaches didn't do the 800. So
yeah, totally. She's kind of paving her own path in that. It is cool to see like Dathan's resume of, Helen, women's best marathoner, in the world. And now Sage is a 155. It is a pretty good running resume for him as a coach. And it's really cool. Do you, if you guys did have kids one day, do you guys see yourselves encouraging your kids to run? I mean, you look at it and you go, oh, the best genes, they're going to be that, you can't compete with, the Kleckers in the future, just with, both of you. Do you guys talk about that ever?
Yeah, I think, we both come from running families and like we love running, but at the same time, it would be fun to do something different if our kids, like, if we move back to Minnesota, like hockey is such a big thing. I always I didn't grow up in a hockey family, and part of me wants to be a hockey family. Like I love hockey, and growing up, my parents just hated it. They didn't care about hockey at all. So I'm like, maybe that'd be fun if they played hockey, but certainly if they want to run, like I'm going to be excited about it. Like that'd be amazing. But certainly open to like just diving into whatever they want to do eventually when we have kids. Most likely back in Minnesota, I think we'll end up there just because a lot of my family's there. I think running would be great. But again, like it's been my whole life since I was born, and doing something different could be fun.
Totally. What's next for you after New York City? We're going to wrap up here. I just want to know like what your plan is once you finish the race.
Yeah, definitely a little break. I think coming off this like 6 to 8 months of no real hard training, I've had now 14 to 15 months where I've averaged, I've been super consistent. I think the most I took off was 2 days after Beach to Beacon, just because I was sick. And so I need to take some time to like let the body recover. As much as I'm like just so anxious and like want to keep racing and keep doing everything, I need to take a step back and let the body reset. But I'm happy, like, I just realized the last 52 weeks, I've averaged 100 miles a week. So I've done these things with consistency that I've never done. So I think I'm at a point now where it's like, okay, after New York, I can let myself rest a little bit. But, maybe I'll come back for Houston, half again, do some of the races I did last year in the spring, but cut a number of them out and try and make them more impactful when I do them. I don't feel like I need the learning that I did last spring. So now I can show up to these races maybe a little more, know what to expect and kind of make, the races impactful. It's like you look at someone, I always look at like Mance's career because he's paving the way in the US right now. And you think this guy races a lot, which he does, but really it's every time he steps on the line, it's impactful. He never steps on the line and it's like, you forget about it. It's like American record, great race, competing for the win. And so I think there's something to learn from that like you step on the line when you're ready. And you try and make every race you do impactful. So that's kind of how I want to approach next year, a little different from this year where it was like crash course in learning how to road race.
I love that. I told my mom last year, I said, I am done running races when I'm not prepared for them. Like I'm done. Like I do not like that experience. And I think that's cool that for you to say that out loud.
Yeah. And it's hard when you're not ready, but you have that goal still. Like in Cherry Blossom, you ran a really good race, but I'm sure you wanted to be up higher and like
Totally.
competing higher. It was still an amazing race, but mentally you're just like, gosh, like I wasn't where I wanted to be. So
absolutely. Joe, thank you so much. This is really fun. I think it's just been really cool to, be your friend the last few years and see just the growth that you've had as an athlete, but also just, building an amazing team and building an amazing life with you and Sage. So, good luck in New York. We'll be cheering you on. I won't be there, but we'll be really excited to see how that goes.
Appreciate it. Luckily they have a great broadcast.
Perfect. Thanks everyone. HAX Show episode 3.